we've all probably heard that saying, money can't buy happiness. We've all heard that, yeah? I respectfully disagree that money can't buy you happiness. I actually believe that it can. And I believe that an idea worth sharing is having that conversation. But in order to do so, I do need your permission because these are going to be real conversations, real stories of mine, and we're going to go some hard places together. So can I have your permission to do that? I'm glad you said yes because I can't change my slides now. And the next one's a doozy. So this was the beginning of my story. On September of 2004, my two best friends and I hopped in a car to drive out to Las Vegas, Nevada. Steve was driving. This is his car. Matt was in the passenger seat, and I was in the back seat. We had all just turned 21 years old, and this is going to be our first time in Vegas at 21. As you can see, we didn't make it to Vegas. We got in a rollover car accident where I was ejected, Steve was ejected. Matt did not get ejected. He was rushed to the hospital in an ambulance. Steve and I were both rushed to the hospital in a helicopter. I was ejected, they think, out of the back there where you would open it for groceries, and Steve was ejected out of the driver's window. The long story short of that is Matt and I survived. Steve didn't. And so Matt and I just survived an accident where we lost our best friend and made it personally. And so what that did is it put us in this place of not just grief, as to be expected, but guilt. Matt and I were trying to figure out why we're here. There were three of us, now there's just two of us. And Steve, Matt, and I go way back. Steve and I grew up together. He was like a brother to me. And so it was a tragic loss. 66 days later, Matt and I fell into an abandoned mine shaft together. On my way in, I was able to grab a bush and stop my fall and climb back out. Matt fell 780 feet to the bottom and didn't survive. So in 66 days, I was in two accidents that took the two closest people to me at that time in my life. Accidents that should have taken my life as well. And as you can imagine, going through that is something that changes you forever. I went through all the obvious grieving stages. I was extremely depressed. I was never suicidal. I didn't write a note. I didn't plan on ending my life, but I didn't want to be alive because I had soul-crushing grief. I was in an accident with Steve. Matt and I survived. I fell in a mine shaft with Matt. I survived. And I'll never forget being at his funeral, not being able to look at his mom and dad in the face because I felt so guilty that I had escaped twice and their boy didn't make it. And so I went through a very ugly season. And what I decided in probably the ugliest moment of the whole ordeal was that I couldn't do anything about bringing Steve and Matt back. I couldn't do anything about reversing the clock, but I could do something with the time I had left. And instead of being a victim and feeling sorry for myself and blaming the world for bad life circumstances, I decided I can let that create who I was going to be. And I looked up to them and I promised them that I would tell their story forever and that I would live a life big enough for the three of us. That I was going to use my God-given talents, gifts, my relationships, and my resources and lay it all on the field and do everything I had for them. And so naturally I turned towards philanthropy. I said, okay, they only had 21 years of life. I don't know if I've got another year, another decade, or if I get to live my full life, but I'm going to make every moment count. I'm going to make my life matter. And so I went to start a nonprofit. And I wanted to start a nonprofit. I wanted to go change the world in honor of Steve and Matt. And what I found out pretty quickly is nonprofits are extremely non-profitable, and you actually need money. And so as I was creating a business plan, that was something I hadn't thought about. I just saw my life changing and helping the world, and then all of a sudden you have to write a check for that. And so as I was evaluating business models for nonprofits, it looked very simple, or very similar to regular for-profit businesses. To get someone to hand me money for a charitable act seemed actually more difficult than to get someone to hand me money for a product, good, or service. And I could either commit to starting a nonprofit and then rely on donors to believe in me or my cause enough to continue to give me money, or I could start a business that I was just getting people to buy my product, good, or service and use the profits from that business to fund my dream. So that's what I decided to do. I said, you know what? It seems just as hard to make money in business as it is to raise money in philanthropy. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to be so rich. I'm going to be like Bill Gates, and I'm going to be like Warren Buffett and just have so much oodles of cash. I've got nothing but time and money to give back to the world. So that was my plan. And as I look over these 12 years, it's been 12 years since those accidents, back over my history, I've been in 4 distinct areas of life. I call them seasons of life. And as I've shared my journey of my ups and downs with others, they can always find themselves in one of the 4 seasons I was in. And so to illustrate this, I actually created a graph to demonstrate where I was, and you guys can probably take a look up here and figure out where you are personally. So this is a graph. We made it more of a kind of a cartoonish looking graph, but that vertical axis represents profits. The higher you go up the vertical axis in this graph, the more money you're making. The horizontal axis represents purpose. the farther to the right you go, the more purposeful you're being. So where I started my career is in the top left quadrant. I wanted to make a ton of money. And I said to myself, someday I'll refresh my balance in my bank account and that magic number will be there, whatever that number is, where I know that for the rest of my life I can now just work on philanthropy and I don't have to worry about money again. I didn't know what that number was, but I knew someday it would come. And I was in what's called the earning quadrant. A lot of people in the earning quadrant pursue it because that's where the world told us we're going to be happy. The more money you have, the more cars you have, the better vacations you have, somehow you're going to be happier. Yet I personally have found no correlation between happiness and the amount of money you have, more so what you do with the money you have. And so I was out there doing what I felt born to do, start businesses, make a ton of money, and someday be so rich I didn't have to work anymore. And I did that. I found a mentor. I said, okay, if I'm going to be successful in business, what's the first step? And everyone's always asking, Cole, what's the secret to success? I don't believe there's a secret at all. You just find someone who is where you want to be, you copy them, and you can have similar results, right? I always say that I'm just the best copycat I know. So I read an article somewhere that real estate people make money, and I asked my father to be my business partner. I pitched him with the best business plan I could ever think of. I said, Dad, you have the money, I have the time, let's do this, right? Luckily, my father shot me down and said, I will be your business partner, but I'm not going to hand you money. We had to learn how to raise money. And we did so by being mentored by a real estate multimillionaire. And it worked really well for us, mostly due to timing. 2005, 6, and 7, we crushed it. 2007 turned into 2008. You already know what happened. I was a real estate professional, exclusively making money in real estate in our recession and collapse of real estate. And I started going down the gradient. I stopped making money. I started losing money, and I found myself in the surviving quadrant. So if you look at these quadrants, again, I'm now low profit, low purpose. I'm in the surviving quadrant. And statistically, that's where most people are, just based on the facts of living paycheck to paycheck. You've heard those statistics. 50 to 80% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. That's where I was, more deal to deal. And I like to clarify something and say that your net worth has nothing to do with your human worth. Who we are as human beings is not defined by the dollars in our bank account. However, the dollars in our bank account give us more options of being who I believe God made us to be. And so in the surviving quadrant, I had one option: make it through the day, figure out how to pay the bills. And instead of having an outward focus of going out there and changing the world for Steve and Matt, I had to have an inward focus of just getting through the week. I had to figure out how I was going to pay my car payment, my insurance, and sometimes things weren't paid. And I spent 2 years in the surviving quadrant just trying to get by. And I realized that wasn't what I was born to do. And I had a chance to, somebody mentioned Haiti earlier, I had a chance to go to Haiti in January of 2010, immediately following that earthquake. You guys remember that catastrophic earthquake that Haiti endured? I was sent as an emergency responder, and I met this little boy right here, and he changed my life forever. Part of my role and responsibility in Haiti was to search and rescue, was to go and find people who had been pinned, get them unpinned and bring them back. And as you can imagine, as the days went on, it wasn't search and rescue, it was more just recovery. And we found this little boy. He'd been buried alive for days. His leg had been smashed and had become infected, and from about the shin down, his leg had to be amputated. And I'm doing his post-operative care here. I'm cleaning his wound. And they speak Creole and French in Haiti. I speak neither. So this gentleman right here was my translator. And what's interesting about this boy is you could see the huge scar on his forehead and just his injuries, is he had this peace about him. He was always okay. No matter what we did, hey, this is going to hurt, he was okay. And he always smiled. And through my translator, I asked him why he always smiles. And he responded, looking at me, and the translator translating, he says, he smiles because you gave him life again. Coming home from Haiti, all of a sudden struggling to pay for a Cadillac Escalade wasn't important to me anymore. And seeing the catastrophic devastation every single day while I was over there changed my priorities. I didn't want to pursue money anymore. I wanted to get right into living a life of purpose. And so what I did was I stepped down from my company. I gave my company to my father, and I moved over to the giving quadrant. I said, you know what? It's pretty hard to start your own nonprofit. It didn't work out for me to get so rich that I then have enough money and time to give back for the rest of my life. I lost it all in the recession, and that's my fault for being over-leveraged in real estate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to join someone else's nonprofit, and now I'm just going to do philanthropy for the rest of my life. And so what that did was it took away my profit, but it gave me purpose again. And I moved to the bottom right quadrant, as you can see here on this axis, high purpose, low profits. And the type of individuals and organizations you find there are your peace workers, those are your churches, those are your nonprofits. These are individuals and organizations that are designed to give back. However, always relying on donors to support to stay in business. And one of the number one function of churches and nonprofits, rightfully so, is fundraising. They want to go change the world. Someone's got to write a check to do that. Now we're leading into how money can buy happiness. And so as I lived in that giving quadrant, I actually moved to Mexico and I joined staff full-time and worked 5 to 6 days a week building houses for homeless families. Then I would surf and eat tacos. Then I would go work with orphans, and then I would surf and eat more tacos. And then we would give back to the homeless on the streets by bringing them tacos. And it was something about just giving to others the entire time, the tacos and the surfing and just being out of my own element. I mean, I shut my cell phone down. I fell off the map. This was like my time in the wilderness. I found happiness myself. And part of it came from this little girl right here who changed my life forever. This is Abigail. And she gives me a little emotional. I must be pregnant. My wife cries through every pregnancy, saw it commercial. But this is Abigail. And she changed my life forever. She was not an orphan, so I helped start an orphanage, and she lived just on the other side of the wall from that orphanage. She had 2 younger sisters, a mother and a father, and they were living in a 16 by 20 foot house. I know this because we built it for them in the nonprofit, and I absolutely fell in love with this little girl. And when I would pull my truck up in front of the orphanage, she and her sisters would come and tackle me and just love on me and tell me that they loved me. And I started supporting them. I would buy their groceries and I would bring it to them. And I found that maybe 40 to 50 US dollars in Mexico at their grocery stores could feed a family of 5 every week. And I'll never forget one of the experiences I had where I was carrying the groceries and I knocked on the door. The father opened the door. He saw that it was me. He knew who I was. I had the groceries, and he just had a tear come down his face. And he just thanked me. And I realized that I figured out how to buy happiness. And that was my first experience of making money matter. See, I'd made a lot of money before and spent it, but this was a way to make money and then make it matter. I was feeding a family. I was then able to start feeding that orphanage as well. Now, this was out of the savings and the things that I was selling while I was in Mexico. Remember, I had walked away from my business. But I was seeing how so little to me was so much for them. Although it was maybe $400 to $500 a month, there were 21 orphans that didn't have to experience hunger anymore. And I became obsessed with this idea of making my money matter, of finding ways to not just spend your money in fun, and you do that and feel guilt-free about it, but a portion of my money was going towards feeding children. And it gave me a feeling that I can't possibly explain to you with words. But what I learned is that those that say money can't buy happiness, they're shopping in the wrong stores. Try feeding a child and tell me that doesn't give you a greater sense of joy than you've probably ever experienced before. But I realized I was out of money. And I came to another T in the road. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go back to America. I'm going to restart my businesses, start new businesses. And I have this newfound ambition to make more money than I ever have before because I want to make a difference. I want to make my money matter. And so I climbed up this gradient of profits and purpose now. I was in the top right gradient, what we call thriving. As you can see, that's a business that's making a lot of money and giving back. And instead of just making money and then donating it, it's actually built into my business model. See, traditionally, you have what are called for-profit businesses and non-profit businesses. By taking a business and creating some social cause or some give element, we've created this hybrid that I'm calling a for-purpose business. It's not a nonprofit. It's not a for-profit. It makes money but changes the world simultaneously. Again, it doesn't rely on me to give. My wife and I do that privately. This is a business that gives back as I make more money, and I've got record-breaking quarters, and I've got record-breaking earnings statements. I also have record-breaking impact. And my wife and I have had the privilege of teaching thousands of business owners around the world this for-purpose business model of how to get to the thriving quadrant. And so they've started to call themselves the Thrive Tribe. They're super fired up. They found me. They're here. But the Thrive Tribe of men and women who take their talents and resources and their businesses to change the world. And it's really cool. You're seeing more and more of these pop up everywhere. You've got Sevenly, who they donate $7, and this is just a small sampling. They donate $7 for everything you buy off of their website to charity. You have Tom's, that's probably a pretty famous one, that started their business model 1 for 1. Buy a pair of shoes, they give a pair away. More recently, we've seen Stella step up and partner with water.org. Stella was founded in 1366. It's been around for hundreds of years, but recently they started the Buy a Lady a Drink, which what that means is when you do business with Stella, they give a portion of their proceeds away to water.org to provide clean water to people, children, women, and men who don't have access to clean water. You see companies that are being started for purpose from day one. So this is a company here, when you go to Stella, that changed their business model. They've been around hundreds of years. They did this. So you're seeing existing businesses connect to social causes. You're also seeing new businesses being started for social causes. Bridget, she's the founder of Listen, and they build premium headphones. And for every pair of headphones you buy, through the Starkey Hearing Foundation, they donate a hearing aid to a child who can't hear. And we're seeing this ripple effect of just entrepreneurs that are deciding to not want to just be capitalist consumers, but philanthropic entrepreneurs. And there's actual consumer behavior that's starting to change from this as well. There was a study done by Khan. It's called their Corporate Social Responsibility Report, and the statistics are pretty startling. What you can see here on the screen, it's doing that, there we go. 91% of global consumers expect companies to do more than a profit. Now I want you to know this is a global survey. 91% of people doing business, for any of us who own a business, expect us to do more than just make money. 84%, this is the big one, say that they would purchase products from companies with a cause over companies without. That means greater market share. This next one blew my mind. 90% of global consumers say that they would like to see more purpose-driven products and companies in the marketplace. What that means for those of us in here who may own a business or someday hope to, 90% of people that are going to be spending money with you want to see you do something social with it. And this is a quote from that research article that says, consumers consider a company's social and environmental commitments before they make buying decisions. Consumers more and more are saying, okay, if I do business with you, what are you going to do for others? And another reason that I personally believe that you're seeing more and more of these companies start up, other than just wanting to be good human beings and leave a legacy and do meaningful work with our money and make our money matter, I believe another reason we see it is just people aren't happy in the workplace. Deloitte did a study that said that over 80% of employees are unhappy in their careers or profession. Men and women are realizing that they spend more time with their employers than they do with their own family in careers and jobs that don't serve them emotionally, that don't challenge them, that aren't using their gifts and their talents. They're just showing up for a paycheck and they've had enough. You see an even greater number of that amongst millennials that are even more so in tune with wanting to do work that matters. And I love what Time magazine says right here about millennials. This is just interesting. It says that we are the me generation. I like this part. It says millennials are lazy, entitled, narcissists, who still live with their parents. So I thought that was an interesting article. I was going to read it, but I was too lazy. But I'm sure it was fantastic. And so why I believe that an idea worth sharing is making your money matter, is starting a for-purpose business, is because this is a way that we can make a difference in the world. In here real quickly, if time and money didn't matter anymore, how many of you, by a show of hands, would spend some of your time and money giving back? Raise your hands. I know this requires participation. Okay, looks like all of you. And so why start a for-purpose business? Because this gives you a greater self-purpose. It makes you a part of community of, you heard them in here, a tribe of growing entrepreneurs who want to use their businesses to make the world a better place. Where the bottom line matters, you've got to stay in business, but more so is the impact we're making. The unromantic facts of this is that this is an emerging trend, and for those of us who are in business, know that you want to be an early adapter. You want to get ahead of trends. You don't want to be one of these stuffy corporate entities that takes forever to come around and is losing market share to companies that are more innovative, that are incorporating a for-purpose element immediately. So there's emerging trends in business. You want to be ahead of that. Consumer behavior is actually changing. And again, as much grief as we millennials get, I'm on the older end of that, but I made it by dates, I guess. But millennials and even whoever's after that are becoming more and more socially conscious. So you can oppose opposition, call them lazy and narcissistic, or you can actually create companies that cater to where they want to spend their money. When you want to get onto the romantic side of why to do this, it connects your income to meaningful work. You feel fulfilled not just because you're making money, but because you're making your money matter. It creates a legacy. And then you're joining a family, our Thrive Tribe, who are committed to leaving the world better than we entered it. And that's my goal. And as you know, I promised Steve and Matt that I would make my life matter. And so I like closing with this quote by John C. Maxwell. He's one of my favorite authors. He says, "The truth is, you can spend your life any way you want, but you can spend it only once." And so I challenge you guys to consider that. This is our only at bat. And so all of us want to do something that we want to be remembered for. One of the earlier speakers showed a picture of a funeral with empty seats. Man, I want mine to be a sold-out audience with people fighting for the microphones. But a lot of the work that I want to do in the world requires money, which means I'm going to have to write a check. And when I'm writing these checks, I'm buying my happiness. And so my commitment to Steve and Matt is to live a life that matters. I'm doing that by building businesses that make the world a better place. And I challenge you to consider doing the same. Thank you for giving me a moment to talk about Steve and Matt. Appreciate it.